I were to ask you, what do you do? Most of us would respond something in line with our work or occupation. I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a physicist, I'm a poet. I might be broke if I'm a poet, but I'm still a poet. I'm a professor or I'm a student. And yet we all fulfill deeper roles in our lives than just what we do for a living. I'm a husband to my wife, pictured here. I know it's blurry, but trust me, I married way above my pay grade. I'm also a dad to my young boys. This is Henry. Yes, I caught him. And my older daughter. Still trying to be the father that I think they deserve. Previously, I served 25 years in the U.S. military. I started at the very bottom of the U.S. Air Force. That rank is called Airman Basic. It's like the base motto with no options. And served through senior officer. I've had assignments in the Pentagon in the Middle East. I worked with our new NATO partners in Eastern Europe. I had the honor of commanding men and women in service of their nation and flown those who fell on the battlefield home to their final resting place. In 2003 and 2004, I was a member of the United Nations Peacekeeping Force in Liberia, West Africa, fresh on the heels of their gruesome civil war. And currently, I serve as a partner in the Barry Waymiller Leadership Institute, transferring a career of serving nation into a career now of serving humanity. In all of those roles, at times, I'm a leader. And in all of those roles, I have failed. I failed in my first marriage. I'm not, as the coffee cup might say, world's greatest dad. My young boys probably think that going to your room and thinking about your actions is going to solve all of the world's problems, even global warming. And as I look back upon my military career, I think, oh my gosh, if this older, more mature self could talk to the younger version and tell them you can't just order people around and expect them to do what you want to your quality standards on your timeline and then be frustrated when it doesn't happen. That's being a boss or a manager or a supervisor. And no one likes to be bossed, managed, or supervised. It's interesting, the language, the words, the titles we use for the work of leadership, isn't it? As I reflect on these successes and failures, both deployed and at home, deployed to war-torn lands and impoverished lands, across all kinds of organizations, both in the public and private sector, I realize leadership is exactly the same. Now, I don't care, and I'm not interested in what the formal definition of leadership is. It's too easy to misinterpret. Here's my truth. Leadership is the relationship between people. And as I reflected upon this truth, I realized we treat people so differently at work than we do at home. Why does anybody here care about that? Why does anyone care about that? Because how we lead and how we are led impacts how we are all going to live. The places where we make a living, it's where we spend the majority of our waking lives. So today I'm going to share with you a few stories that articulate this great divide between home and work life, and a little bit about what happens, the benefits of such when you focus on the relationships between people. My wife and I are raising 2 young boys. It's very important to us that we give them all the love and care and support so they grow into be good people. And that's obvious that it's important that my wife is engaged in this endeavor. And so to determine my wife's engagement in the raising of our children, the commitment to the marriage, and the productivity of our household, I did what any good organization would do. Replacing the word manager with the word husband, I sent her an online engagement survey. This is a copy of that email that I sent her. In it, I asked her such questions as, my husband gives me a lot of support, the amount of work I'm asked to do is reasonable. My husband gives me constructive and honest feedback. What spouse wouldn't want that, huh? And my personal favorite, I can disagree with my husband without fear of getting in trouble. Family law attorneys out there are thinking, you're about to be on your second failed marriage. Here's my wife's response. Where'd you get this stuff from? And do you really, all caps, want the answers? My wife has a great way of saying a whole bunch with just a few little words. And in between the lines, what she's really saying is, 1, this is a terrible venue, terrible medium to have this conversation. 2, is anything really going to change if I give you these answers? Spoiler alert, that's not that far off from what people at work feel like when they get these. We find it absurd that I would do this in a family because we realize we can't have a relationship with a survey solely based on that. And yet we find it perfectly acceptable to do so in organizations. How crazy, right? Because both groups, both the family and the organization, they're both made up of, what do you call those things? Oh yeah, I know, people. Imagine the difference if I sat down in person with my wife and said to her, I know that you put your entire career on hold to support my service in the military and to be the primary caregiver to our young boys. As we do everything we can to love and support them and give them our opportunities so that they can grow and develop their gifts and talents into good people, I want to know, what can I do to support your role as a person who's building the foundation upon which everything else will rest? Feels a little different, doesn't it? If you want engaged people, listen to them. And you don't listen through technology, you listen in the relationship. Leadership is the relationship between people. And if there's one thing relationships need, it's understanding. And one understanding we commonly misinterpret is what actually motivates someone. You can't actually motivate another person. You can only create the environment for them to motivate themselves. I'll give you an example from a place whose entire existence, whose sole purpose is meant to mold young men and women to serve in one of the most difficult callings there is. I'm talking about boot camp. Air Force, military, basic training. The kind of place that says, you know what, you actually don't need to set an alarm. We'll make sure you get up right on time. I went through boot camp when I was 18 years old. It was quite an uninspiring experience for me. I remember a lot of yelling and screaming and degrading and insults. And next thing you know, 6 weeks, 2 months later, something like that, I'm on a bus, headed to technical school to learn how to fix airplanes. I said to myself under my breath as that bus left the base, I said, if I ever come back here, it will be as a commander to make some changes. Luck, fate, fortune, divine intervention would have it. I got my college degree, went through officer training school, and several assignments later, when it came time for the honor to command, the place I wanted to go, my number one choice, was right back to Air Force basic military training. Important to know that basic training, when it started, it was based on when we had the draft, when a good portion of the people that were there by law, not by choice. Today, we welcome young men and women, volunteers, millennials, by the way, who sign up during a time of war and conflict. Now, yelling has its place in basic training. We create artificial stress by this. And these are stressful roles these men and women will go into. But one day I asked my lead sergeant, who, lucky for me, had previously been a drill sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. I said, why do we continue this behavior, this yelling, this screaming, while they're trying to eat? Why are we doing this at mealtime? He said, beats me, sir. We don't do this with the Marines. I said, what? We're the Air Force. What are we trying to do, out-tough the Marines by not feeding them? We ask them to get up in the morning. We ask them to give their all during physical training. Stay awake during the classroom. Absorb all this information. Learn to shoot a weapon. Learn to make great decisions. We're building character here. And we're doing it on a reduced food intake? What's the training point? Why are we yelling at him? He said, I don't know, sir. Why are you yelling at me? The irony is we had that conversation in the facility where everyone was eating. We made some big changes in that squadron. We stopped the insulting, the abusive, sometimes abusive language, and we were out of the track. Instead of just criticizing them, telling them how terrible they were, we encouraged. We asked them, why did you choose to serve? What do you hope to accomplish? We listened. We ran with them. Some people might say, oh, way to go, fantastic. That's what the world needs, another place where we're all being nice. It's all about participation trophies and rainbows and unicorns, fluffy kittens and hugs, right? This is anything but about being nice. As the role of the commander, I was not nice. A lot of times that was by design. This is about the stewardship of the lives entrusted into your care. At basic training, they were all volunteers. And to motivate them, we ran the same exact program as every other squadron in basic training in the Air Force. No changes. To motivate our trainees, we call them, we focused on creating an environment where they would motivate themselves. And we built this environment with our relationships. Leadership is a relationship between people. So how did all this work out? Our squadron went to number 1 in drill and ceremonies, number 1 in marksmanship, number 1 in field deployment exercises, number 1 on-time graduation rate percentage, number 1 for men and women in physical fitness. Faster run times, more push-ups, more sit-ups, more heart, more desire, more motivation. all because we focused on creating the environment through our relationships. The Air Force came out and made sure that we were running the exact program by the books as everyone else was. We were. Then they measured the track. Still a quarter mile. What does this have to do with our places of employment, our organizations, our universities? They're all volunteers. Instead of trying to force and make someone change or motivate them only with the rewards or punishments or lack thereof, we think about creating that environment with the relationship. And think about how this relates to our home life as well. We're not just motivating and encouraging people we care about with sticks and carrots, rewards and punishments. No, we're involved. We're thinking about the environment that we're creating with our relationships. Am I spending enough time with my spouse, with my children? Do I know their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations, their why? This is what you do inside the relationship. Leadership is the relationship between people. And if there's one way we reinforce this relationship, it is with the incredible power of recognition and celebration. My youngest is learning to ride a bike. And as he tries to ride with the training wheels off, and tears start to come down his eyes because the laws of physics have betrayed his trust once again. Do I say anything? No, because I'm after the achievement. This is what we commonly see in our organizations. We reward the achievement. I'll give you an example. We reward birthdays. Congratulations, you're still breathing. We reward length of service. Congratulations, you're still breathing at the same place. Quarterly sales targets, quality awards, safety awards. They're all achievements, achievements, achievements. Think about it if we did that in the family. So here my young son is trying to ride the bike, and he gets back on that bike with those tears, with that grit and determination and tenacity that he's going to ride again. All qualities that will serve him very well later in life. But do I say anything? Nope, because I'm after the achievement. When you ride that bike and achieve that goal, that's when I'll recognize and celebrate your efforts. And I'm also missing the opportunity to recognize and celebrate the example he's being when he's wearing his helmet, looking both ways before he crosses, not running down the elderly on the sidewalk. But I say nothing, tell the achievement. But that isn't the way we treat people that we care about. We're along for the journey. We're there when it all starts. We're encouraging, we're reminding them of the vision. We're letting them fail at times. We're watching out for their safety. And think about all the opportunities I would have missed if from the time that they said they're going to ride a bike to the time that they actually rode it, all those opportunities to encourage, to recognize and celebrate the example and the effort they were putting forth. That's what we do inside the relationship. And leadership is a relationship between people. It's peculiar as well about how we seem to separate out recognition and celebration between work and family. When the person we want to let them know that they matter or what they've done matters, we exclude that from the family. Peculiar since we strive so hard. Sometimes we're supporting a family, but certainly we want to know, we want to make moms and dads, brothers and sisters, wives and husbands, we want to make them proud. And yet we seclude that from our friends and family. I'll tell you a quick story about someone who went against that grain. My mom has all of my decorations, all the things you amass after a career in the armed forces. But the one piece that sits so prominently in her house, framed, the one that I look at every time I come home, it's a letter written by a general. Not addressed to me, but addressed to her. And in it, he's thanking her, not just for supporting my service to country, but also for the job she did raising me. This means a great deal to me because my mother sacrificed a lot. You see, she only has 2 kids, my brother and I, and we both joined the Air Force when we were 18 years old. We've never lived back since. Holidays with all of us together were a rarity. My brother and I were usually deployed or in some bad place in the world, causing my mother to be in a perpetual state of prayer in a little church in Balboa Island in Southern California. Yet she never complained. She never said anything but, I want you to follow your dreams and go off and make your own little dent in the universe. That's why that recognition means so much to me, because that general wasn't thanking me. He was thanking the source. He was thanking the source of my goodness. What did it cost that general? stamp a few minutes of his time. Time is the currency of leadership. Spend it recognizing and celebrating your people for the achievement, for the effort, for the example that they're being. And don't separate out that person from the family and loved ones they would love to recognize and celebrate with. This is what you can do inside that relationship. Leadership is the relationship between people. And on that note, and in this spirit, I'd like to recognize and bring up to the stage Claire Martin, Haley Sanders, and Rocky Lang. These three people, they were involved in putting this event on. The action that they did was that they provided accurate, insightful, inspirational communications for the last 4 months. They provided every speaker expert resources. The impact of that action was that every speaker here today, to include myself, got to show up as the best versions of ourselves. And the feeling that I have from that action and that impact is heartfelt gratitude. Thank all of you for your leadership at this event. When I think of our future, our collective future, I have nothing but hope and confidence because of people like Rocky and Claire and Haley, millennials, them, like my daughter, and the 11,000 men and women who went through the squadron that I had the honor of commanding. We all want to know that who we are and what we do matter. And this begins and ends with the relationships we have with one another. This is the space that leadership lives in. A caring family measures success by the way it touches the lives of people. And a caring organization does exactly the same thing. Thank you very much.